Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Gardner, comments, questions? Call the vote. Recorded vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record vote for the only item of council reporting on a closed session. Councillor Kim is absent. Councillor Gilliland, how do you vote? Councillor Gilliland votes yes. Councillor Humphreys is absent. Councillor Gallo, how do you vote? Councillor Gardner?
I vote yes.
Councillor Thompson? Councillor Thompson votes yes, and Mayor Maracus.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Affirming bylaw. Councillor Gallo, second. Councillor Gardner. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gilliland, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Mr. Clerk, time is 7:02. I will call this general committee meeting to order. Council, it is Councillor Gardner's turn, but she is joining us virtually, so therefore I will be chairing the meeting tonight unless there are any objections.
Thank you. I appreciate you chairing, Mr. Mayor.
No, you're welcome, Councillor Carter. Hey, we'd like to start by acknowledging that the land on which we live and work is the traditional and treaty territory of the Anishinaabe and many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As a municipality, Aurora has shared responsibility for the stewardship of this land. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, recognized through Treaty 13 as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. A shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and of how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Thompson, do you have something?
Thank you. I'd ask that my colleagues indulge me with a waiver of the procedural bylaws so that we can add a notice of motion. I did circulate it earlier. There is some time sensitivity. I apologize for not getting it in within the proper timelines, but Deputy Inglis is coming next week. It'll also be an opportunity for him to speak about it as well. And so I wanted to do it concurrently. So if my colleagues are comfortable, I'd ask that the waiver of procedure just to add the notice. There'll be no discussion on it tonight. It'll be for next week.
Councillor Gallo?
I haven't checked my emails, so maybe you can go through what.
It's a JCC motion, I guess.
I just don't know what it is.
Councillor Thompson?
Councillor Gallo, it was what was discussed at JCC previously. It concerns the mandatory certification for firefighters. Newmarket, Christina Bizantz, our chair, also had tabled the exact same motion. It's really in support of AMO's recommendations and concerns expressed with the legislation.
Okay. Council, I'm going to ask for a vote. Will we waive procedure and approve the agenda all at once? And if we don't make 2/3, then we'll figure it out at that point. If everyone's comfortable with that, all right? Okay, so I need 2/3. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. No community presentations, no delegations, consent agenda. 7.1, we have one item, memo from Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gardner, yes, I have it, but did you want to move that? So we're going to be receiving it right now, but I know you probably want to say a few words, but did you want to move that?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Thank you. Would someone like the second? Receive. Thank you. Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Gardner, did you have just something to say about that one before I call the vote?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's something that we learned at the board meeting. I believe it was the April board meeting, but it's timely to mention it. We were talking about peat. That's the peat that we use in our gardening that was always my family, the Holy Grail. I just wanted to mention that peatlands are a type of wetland, and they're critical to preventing and mitigating the effects of climate change. And I didn't know any of this, but peatlands are the largest natural carbon sink on Earth. I don't believe there's much peat being mined in Ontario, perhaps Northern Ontario. because this has become well recognized, but I believe it is coming from other places. So I would just ask that when we're doing our gardening and buying our earth, we might watch out for inclusion of peat and respect that it is so important to the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Garner. Any other comments or questions on the memo? Call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next, we'll move to number 8, advisory committee meeting minutes. We have 3 items. Get someone to move 8.1 to 8.3. Councilor Humphreys. Second, Councilor Gillen. Does anyone want any of those items? No? Any comments? Nope. Call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Items requiring discussion. 9.1. Off-leash dog park and trail pilot program. Recommendations, report number OPS 22-010 be received. 2, that the proposed off-leash pilot program locations at Darkwood Detention and Tim Jones Trail be approved. And 3, that dogs not be permitted within the environmentally sensitive lands of the David Tomlinson Nature Reserve and associated trails. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councilor Gillen, second by Councilor Humphreys. Comments or questions? Councilor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very pleased that this is the conclusion that staff has come to. I think that David, Mr. Tomlinson, after all the work he's done to protect the wildlife in this park and, you know, the blinds and just so many features to protect from human invasion, sound-wise, etc., that he would have been extremely unhappy had we decided to have a dog park here. And I would also like to say that David and Deidre are going to be moving out of Aurora very shortly. They'll be going up to live near their daughter. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gillen.
Thank you. Always in support of extra areas for dogs to have a place to run and play. Love the fact that we are going down the pathway of some trails that are going to be off leash. I did speak to staff, and I'm really hoping that we can at least offer some sort of alternative area in the west side of Aurora. I would say in around Kennedy and north all the way up to St. John's there. There's really nothing on that side of town. So hopefully we can continue to look at, you know, some properties there, because I do know a lot of neighbors in the community up in that area have at high demand of wanting to be able to have somewhere to go, as opposed to having to hop in a car and go to a dog park or such. So I know this is a good start. Hopefully, you know, we won't have any challenges and this will become a good thing. I guess one question, and it might have been in the report, but I apologize, I'm going to ask again through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Downey. Is there an anticipation of perhaps at the second off-leash area that you might put one of those waste diversion pickups there and that trail, that area?
Mr. Downey.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The areas that we've identified here do not have one of those dog waste diversion devices. As you know, we reported back to council and identified the locations where those devices were going. I think upon the success of those, I think we're probably going to be expanding that program. And depending on the success of this pilot, then yes, we could very well be putting some of those diversion devices in there, as well as perhaps other areas in town. But our first step is to get I believe the 6 that we've identified in the ground, and we're hoping to do that next month.
Councilor.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you. While I think it's good for us to continue to try and strive to have an off-leash strategy, I have a couple, I guess, comments and concerns about the report in front of us. Through you to Mr. Downey. Ms. Downey, first, with regards to the Darkwood detention area, and I must admit that's the first time I've heard that term used for this area. But when I look at that area itself, where would people park when they,
Mhm.
if they wanted to utilize this, because it looks like it's just, you know, a cul-de-sac and there's no real parking other than on the street.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that was one of our challenges with regards to selecting a location. And so the quick answer is they would have to park on the street. So that is available. We don't know how successful it's going to be. And if we find that that is going to cause a problem, we may come back to council prematurely and say, you know what, we think this park perhaps isn't the right location. We need to find an alternative. One of our concerns is placing or permitting dogs to run free within a park that is predominantly visited by the public. And so kids playing on a playground or playing soccer or playing ball, that was causing us some concern, and certainly was causing some concern with regards to bylaw, because we had quite a conversation with regards to our bylaw department with regards to where we felt the most appropriate location. So that's one of the challenges that we're having. And I think it's a fair concern that if it's a very popular area, we may have to reconsider and look alternatively, but there are very few locations in the town where we have open space without having some public amenity in them.
Councillor?
Thank you. And then through you again to Mr. Downey. Have we notified the residents in that area of the intent to put an off-leash park in that area?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we have not. We have not notified the public with regards to this. We were asked to identify 2 areas, which we have done in this report. And part of that process was not to communicate with the public as to what areas we were selecting. As you know, that was a challenge when looking at a permanent off-leash park. We came to council several times with a proposed location for an off-leash park. Part of that process was a public notification process, and many of the public in that particular area didn't want the park in or an off-leash, a permanent off-leash park in their area. So objection was filed. This was to be a pilot project that if it worked, we would maybe expand it, but we have not made any public consultation.
Councillor?
Thank you. And, you know, I mean, parking and you know, public notification are the 2 concerns I have with this specific area, because I don't necessarily want to go forward with it. And then, as we've seen with every time we've gone down this path, you know, there has been pushback from the public with regards to it. And, you know, I'd rather get out in front of it than be reactive to it. And I'd rather get the sense from the residents in this area, whether or not they're open to that, rather than us pass this pilot project and then deal with the fallout afterwards. So that's that particular one. With regards to the Tim Jones Trail, is Ms. Desario online?
Yes.
Through to Ms. Desario. I'm interested in the report. It speaks about the risk, that there's a higher probability of, you know, accidents or anything happening and liability with regards to the town. So perhaps Ms. Desario can speak to that or expand upon it, that if we allow for off-leash dogs on the Tim Jones Trail, if there's an accident or they bite somebody, does this increase our liability?
Sarah?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it would increase our liability for the fact that we are approving it and that we are allowing dogs to be off the leash. Normally they are on leash. And in a trail, it would be more difficult to contain the animal in the one specific area, because on a trail, it's just a full-blown trail where you can go back and forth and not a confined area like a park would be.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I just, you know, I go back to our processes with we have elsewhere, you know, if a dog's running on the street, bites somebody, we have a tribunal set up. I just have some concerns around it, and it doesn't matter where you put it on the trail. You know, I did like it mentioned in the report where they talk about the fact that in some places like the City of Toronto, they're able to do these concurrent paths whereby those that don't want to be on a path with off-leash dogs can do so and they have that choice, but you wouldn't have it in this case. I mean, if somebody's afraid of dogs or doesn't want to be going down the path for whatever reason, then obviously they wouldn't choose to use that trail. I guess the other question through you to Mr. Downey, with regards to the choice of having it, connect up to the borders of Newmarket, has there been any conversation with Newmarket to also have off leash on their side of the trail, or is it really just this short segment where we'd have to have great signage so people know this is where you can take it off and this is where you have to put your dog back on the leash?
Mr. Downey?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, actually was an article that was in regarding Newmarket where they were looking at a pilot for this, which spurred the conversation. And to my knowledge, they have not created an area yet. However, we are responding to a notice of motion made by council. We felt that if Newmarket was interested in creating a leash-free area, this might be an ideal opportunity since there is a direct link across the bridge into Newmarket. So that's one of the reasons that we selected this particular area.
Thank you. I think, in general, I have concerns about the two areas itself. When I look at the alternatives to the recommendation, I kind of actually prefer the alternative number 4, where actually it speaks more so to developing an off-leash strategy first, rather than launch the pilot program. And I'd like to see us have more conversation and have a strategy in place, how we're going to deal with this on a bigger scale than the pilot project itself. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Humphries?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the report. In one hand, I love all the conversation around the table. It's good. It's good to understand all the positives and some of the risks. I know that many residents were looking forward to having a leashless dog trail so that they can walk their animals safely in an area that would be allowed. I do appreciate the communication and the signage. This is going to be very critical while we begin to introduce this in the area. I think I wouldn't mind, to Councillor Thompson's point, perhaps if this does move forward this evening, that we still continue to look at, further development of the Offleash Pilot program and maybe learn from some of the development of the rollout and maybe perhaps fine tune it. Just a quick question to you, Mr. Mayor. And I think I read somewhere in here that other municipalities have off-leash trails. Did we take a look at those in detail? Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Downey, before we created our own? I'm not suggesting that we have to, but just wondering from your perspective and the research that was performed.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, most municipalities who have a leash-free area have them contained within a trail or a park. So, for instance, City of Toronto will designate a portion of a park as leash-free, but it's a fenced area within the park. That is not the direction that we received from council. They wanted people to be able to go into a park area and release their dog. So that's why we raised some issues with regards to some of the concerns or some of the considerations that council may want to give with regards to that. But most leash-free areas are contained by some type of fencing to prevent the animal from injuring other people as well as themselves.
Councillor?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to listen to a little bit more of the debate around the table. I certainly don't want to put a program out there that would be considered dangerous or unique or one of. I may want to listen again to some of the risks. If we feel that we designate an off-leash area and we have it fenced, I'm not sure how that would work on a trail, but I guess if we have this like City of Toronto, I see that's mentioned here. But I think overall, I like the program. I thought this was going to be very exciting, but I certainly don't want to have more risk than benefit at the end of the day. So I'll listen to some more discussion, but I know I was very much in favor of this. In fact, I think it was one of the ideas I put forward. So I'd like to see it be implemented, but certainly with safety at the forefront for sure. I'll enjoy listening a little bit longer.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. I share some of the concerns and I appreciate the discussion around the table. Some of them I didn't even think about. I think communication is going to be a huge part of this. And as far as the David Tomlinson Wildlife Park enforcement and signage, because we're not only saying, you know, not dogs off leash, but no dogs at all. And just to confirm, can I confirm that with Mr. Downey, Mr.
That's
Mayor?
correct. Mr. Downey, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. No dogs at all.
And currently, do we allow dogs there? I'm trying to figure out whether we're going to have to implement the change of habit.
Mr. Downey?
Through Mr. Mayor.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, currently we do on a leash. However, the master plan that was approved by council in 2015, and that's why we read from that excerpt. David Tomlinson, in the design of the park, had always requested that we limit access to the park for dogs, whether they're on a leash or not on a leash. And so we thought this was an appropriate time to bring this forward. It also states in the master plan that, if you don't mind, to offset antagonism, the community should be provided with ample public education on the general issues related to dogs in parks, as well as ample information about alternative dog parks in the area.
Councillor?
Yeah, and I think that's a huge part of the success of that one in particular, the signage, the communication, and if none of that works, the enforcement. And I think we might have a tough time with that if we've gone on a couple of years now with the park relatively active, partially active. I think, and I agree with that from the onset, and it made sense to me if we're going to do that kind of a park that we need to follow that. And just to be clear, that's not part of the pilot project. That is something that you're asking council to implement.
It's a third clause. It's different.
Yeah, it's separate from that, but it's not. I just want confirmation that it's not part of a pilot project.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We felt since we were bringing this report forward, this was the appropriate time to bring forward an area that was identified as non-dog friendly. So that was a discussion we had among staff and felt this was the appropriate time to bring forward, but it was not part of the notice of motion.
Councillor?
Yeah, I think that needs to be done as fast as we possibly can so that we don't have a lot of people using it and expecting to continue to use it in that manner, because we're just gonna have a difficult time changing habits. And there's a lot of homes around there. I suspect there's a lot of people, because it's a beautiful area to actually dog walk. So I don't know if it has to go through budget in terms of signage, in terms of all of that, but it needs to happen as fast as we possibly can. The other ones, the only one thing that stood out is it's a year long. I guess we want to see all the seasons in terms of a pilot to gauge. Every season is going to have something different about it. The alternatives are to shorten that if we feel there's issues, and I'm pretty sure if there are issues, they'll be brought to our attention anyway. So that's kind of my feelings on it.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think in principle, I'm always supportive of off-leash dog park or trail where they can run around and have that freedom, and the owners can enjoy that as well. I do share many of the concerns that's been raised, by staff and themselves in the report. One thing I didn't get in the report is, what is the measurement for success in the pilot project? And, unlike when you're selling a product or service where you're going by a sales metric or something similar, here you're looking at counting the the amount of users in the off-leash park or trail. But as well, you have to use another metric, which is the number of complaints. So you're looking at your left hand and the right hand when it comes to measurement of success. On one hand, you want a lot of users, and on the other hand, you don't want that many complaints coming in on the other side. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Downey, what is the metrics for success after the end of the 12-month period?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the measure we would use is we'll be working with our communications department. I think people have to have an opportunity to express their position, whether or not it's positive or negatively with regards to these two locations. And we would then be providing that communication to council along with a recommendation as to whether or not this is a pilot that we felt was successful and should be expanded, or was a pilot that perhaps this was the wrong location and we should change locations, or a pilot that wasn't necessarily successful and we should not be repeating. So we would make sure that there was a platform where people could make comments on an ongoing basis with regards to any concerns or positive comments they may have on the program.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I suspected as much it was going to be more of a communication type or survey type measure of success, because certainly no one's going to stand there and count the number of people using, and we can't just spot check and do a count. But I thought maybe there might be some kind of solution somewhere halfway in between that we can measure it. But yeah, I think that's my primary concern, is if we do decide to go forward with it after the project or the pilot project is over, is it convincing enough? Because with surveys, with budget surveys and so forth, we don't get that many people responding. So I'm not sure how many people would respond, quite frankly. So that's one of my concerns. But I think in general, I'm in support of pursuing this. I'm not in favor of the two locations. So that's my position. Thank you.
Councillor Gardner, second time, and then Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think through you to Mr. Downey, or just in general, I want to thank you for your work on this. It was a council motion. We may have given you an impossible task, though, with respect to the Darkwood Detention Center, as it's surrounded by residents. We may have the same issue that we had in the Highland Gate area, where the residents were very unhappy. And as we know how many people want to have off-leash parks, and I've had dogs and they're wonderful. We may have a lot of people coming into that neighborhood and parking on the streets. And I think, to Councillor Thompson's point, I'd rather come out ahead of the complaints. I'd rather do the consulting. I'd much rather wait for option 4. But I foresee this as a very big problem. And with respect to the Tim Jones Trail, I honestly can't see how that would work if we're looking at safety. A lot of people use this trail. A lot of people use it to go up to Newmarket and vice versa. And also we have a large seniors residence just next to it. So this is an ideal place for seniors to walk. If you look at the way, at the diagram of the plan, there's a small portion where anybody could walk. And then you have the off-leash park. So we are limiting the amount of space that seniors can use. I think it was a noble idea, but I just can't see that this will work. I will be voting against it. And I do think we absolutely need to go and do option 4 first. And at the very, very least, if council decides to go ahead with this, I think we need to do some consulting with the residents. As a resident, I wouldn't like this to be just dropped into my area. I may want it, but without any consultation at all, just to wake up one day and it's there, I would be very unhappy with my council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yellen, second time.
Thank you. I just want to start off, with the report and how the direction was to identify one park and one trail. And it would have been nice to have seen maybe a bunch of choices of where those opportunities were. And then these choices were staff's best recommendation. We don't know what any of the other recommendations are or what opportunities there are. And I feel like we've gone back and forth from council to staff on numerous occasions on dog parks. Before my time, it was, something considered in all new park designs, and then that got repealed. And then we had another one, and I think it was Highland Gate area or something or other, and then that got repealed. And we're back and forth and back and forth. And I think I'm just getting really frustrated because every time we try to find some solution to offer some kind of off-leash dog park area or walking trail, we always come up empty-handed without a solution. And what's this motion got to look like then? What do we have to direct staff to do in order to get a whole fulsome view of what the options are? Because in my opinion, we have a huge deficit of dog park areas in our town, and especially on the west side of Aurora. And I can foresee that being on a quiet court, you may not want people driving up there and parking and that becoming a Union Station for you to walk a dog and let them run around. Maybe that's an area that a lot of the neighborhood kids go to play soccer or play hide and seek. And now it's all going to be changed. I can definitely foresee how that's going to be an issue, but I would have thought that perhaps in this report, that might have stipulated that would have been a concern with this particular location. I don't even see another choice. And my concern with just choosing alternative recommendation 4 with the strategy, like what is that going to entail? Like, I think we got to be more specific. Then I want to see some action. I don't want to see this being put off for yet another year, another season, another this, another that. It's like, let's do something about this. Like, show us, like, we're out of space. What's the best solution here? Should we have like timed areas? We do a shared park version. Pick a small park in an area that can accommodate in the area, and you have time slots. Maybe that was an option within the options. Do you just pick like 5 or 6 parks and you say to council, these are the 5 or 6 best areas, and we can kind of have a discussion about why we think one is better than the other based on the information from the report? I'm just a little curious as to like what kind of direction that we want to have staff do and come back with, because if staff was directed to come back with just one park and one trail, and this is the report we got to be really specific on what kind of information we're asking staff to come back with, because I don't want to keep going back and forth with this stuff. We got to have said something. I think almost every other resident has purchased a dog during COVID because it was the best thing to do. And I don't know how many doors I've knocked where neighbors are all even saying like, it's got to be a place to go let my dog run around. And there's a deficit there. And of course, these dogs all being cooped up and not having that. Yeah, sure. There could be some behavioral issues with that too. Everything kind of connects, but you're always going to have the off-leash people and the on-leash people. You're not going to win that battle, but we got to give some choices. So I would be happy to direct us back to staff to come back with a fulsome report, but it's got to be specific in the sense that we want to see a fulsome report with all the recommendations, all the possible locations in Aurora that are available, and with maybe some formats of what would work, whether it's timed or if it's a pilot all year round, or maybe option C, which I haven't even thought of yet. That's really my 2 cents. That's how I would put the recommendation on the floor. I'd be a little more specific, so we're not going back and forth. So if somebody would like to support that, I think I would probably, it's my second time speaking, so I kind of feel like I would want to put that recommendation on the floor.
Which one?
To refer back to staff and to come back with a fulsome report of all options available for dog park areas or off the trail areas with different strategies attached to that.
Wouldn't, and Councillor, wouldn't that be number 4?
Well, what does the
Request
strategy mean?
staff develop
Off-leash
a-
strategy of what? I just want to be specific. I don't want it to be taken to a specific, like this motion. One park, one trail, one this. I want it to be a little bit more specific in the sense that we're having a fulsome look throughout the town. I want to see all the options, all the areas, of what's available, not just an off-leash strategy. Trail, park, times, structure.
We could also put it to be done as part of the parks master plan.
And that could take how long? I think residents want to see this sooner than later.
Mr. Downey, I'm assuming not till after the election.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, as you know, council approved a review of the Parks Recreation Master Plan. A consultant has been engaged. We actually start conversations on June the 6th, Monday, I believe that is. This could be part of that discussion.
I don't support that.
So that could also be part of the direction if council wishes, that we could have a discussion about how we can incorporate leash-free zones within our park system or trail system as part of our master plan.
And develop an off-leash strategy within the parks master plan system.
What we attempted to do in the report was provide you with some considerations. And that's why we had identified a number of bullet points that we believe should be considered when looking at a leash-free area, and also helped with the deliberation of council why we picked the locations we did, because we felt that it touched as many of these points as possible.
Thank you. Councillor?
I prefer not to wait for a consultant to tell us where we have open land or
I
wait
got
to
you at
have
time,
it.
but I'll just, if you could just
Okay,
finish
yeah,
up.
I just prefer not to wait for this master plan. I don't think we need a consultant to tell us where open space is available. I think staff's capable of identifying all those spaces. So I feel like I want to refer it back to staff and have them come back with this report to give us all the options and present it to us as a whole.
So
And then look
develop
at it from there.
So develop an off-leash strategy.
Is that, okay, through, if I may, Mr. Downey, is that specific enough to have a wholesome, because I don't want to have this come back and say there's missing information. Is that enough
It's
in
the
that
last question I'm going
recommendation?
to allow, Councillor, because you're way past 5 minutes. Mr. Downey?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, as you can appreciate, there's been a conversation going on for quite some period of time. It's what we're trying to accomplish. And we hear a number of different things with regards to dog owners. Dog owners would like to be able to go into a park with their children and release their dog. And so whether there's a playground there or a soccer field there or a splash pad, that's okay, because the dog needs to run. Many people would say, I don't feel safe in a park like that. And so I don't want my children playing in a park where I don't know that dog and I don't know what that dog's going to do. And so I have some concerns with regards to that. So it's difficult to determine the perspective that people have with regards to why we're doing what we're doing. It's one of the reasons that the two locations we picked have, in our opinion, limited public interaction with the dogs. However, permit that dog to run free. So 4 acres of open space lands within the Darkwood area, lots of room for the dog to run. However, I won't disagree. There may be some parking concerns with regards to that. That may be a space where, as you say, kids go off and play freely, and all of a sudden it's inundated with dogs. I can't say what is the right or the wrong answer, because each person has a different perspective on it. We do have a dog park. However, people wanted additional opportunities beyond a dog park. They wanted to be able to walk on a trail, release their dog, allow it to run, and as they're walking through the trail and having a conversation or taking a bike ride, the dog can run free. If that's council intent, then we're perfectly comfortable with identifying areas such as that. But there has to be some limits with regards to where that happens, unless we make it available everywhere within the town. One of the concerns that was raised, certainly by bylaw, and we support, was that if you have a time where you can do it and not do it, it becomes extremely difficult enforcement wise. And communication of that is very difficult. So that's one of the reasons that we had identified as far as options for council, a strategy. So that we could come to council and saying, here's some of the considerations you may want to give. But whatever we choose, that may not make the dog owners completely happy, and it may not make the people who want to use the parks all that happy either. So I just I am concerned about what we're trying to accomplish, and if my understanding with the intent of the motion was that people wanted to enter into a public space, simply take their dog off leash and let it run. And so we provided 2 opportunities for that to happen.
Thank you, Mr. John.
So like, I'm trying to figure out what kind of,
Council, I'll come back to you
Motion to
because
put
I mean,
forward.
I'm not 100% sure what amendment you want to put forward. So I'll give you a moment to think about how you want it worded. And I'll come back to you and I'll allow you to put an amendment if you have one at that time. I'll go to Councillor Humphries a second time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, listening to the discussion, and I think we all want to have a safe rollout of a pilot program for allowing our animals or dogs to safely enjoy trails or parks along with other residents. And I think, as mentioned, it needs to be, very clearly, the communication is going to be absolutely key. And just looking at the number of alternatives to the recommendation, there's quite a few. There's 5 of them, and I'm just wondering. I know we're calling this a pilot, which is good, and I think what we need to do is truly, to you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Downey, looking at this as a pure pilot program, all the alternatives to the recommendations in this report, I'm assuming will be observed while we're doing the pilot to see if what we learn from it in these areas and see if there's opportunity to, well, I don't know, we can't ask you to shorten the program, but, is there a way to look at different areas of the town while we're looking at how the program is going? I think one of the biggest things that's sticking out for me right now, which is, and I don't know why, but I guess it just is the safety piece. Like you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Downey, having people wanting to go to a park, trail, have their animals run, their dogs run free along with their families, and that it's a safe environment. I think what's really key is that everyone understands what that park is for and what it will be used for, so we can enter that safely. And I think as long as that's done with this pilot, and I'm just looking at the recommendations again, I think, again, it's a pilot. We try to enforce it the way we have it set up. I think we're okay to move forward. I just think at the end of the pilot that there's findings and final recommendations. I think the thing is, this is the first time we're doing this, where it's an integrated program of dogs and families together, residents utilizing the same space. And we just want to make sure it's safe and done well. So I think it needs to be observed and be very, very safe. I know at the very end, we do have to, and maybe Councillor Gilland was getting to that you really do have to develop at the end of the day, a full off-leash strategy. The thing is, do we want to do it now and actually do observations through a real live program? Or do we want to take some time and really study it and then launch it with all the understandings around it? So right now, I'm just sort of thinking between those 2 areas. Thanks, Mr. Ray.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the comments, the insightful comments, and some things that are standing out to me. Safety, I think, parking, communication with residents of a potential off-leash park in their neighborhood. Those are all pretty big concerns that we haven't really addressed. To me, and while I have a dog, we don't necessarily go to off-leash parks because she's small, she'll probably get destroyed. But to me, I agree with the non-integration of our parks where the public is there. I don't think that's a good idea. It needs to be a fenced off area, specific, 24 hours a day, not timed. You want to go with a flashlight at 2 a.m. as long as you comply with, noise bylaws, go crazy. So to me, that's the direction that we need to go. And when we select, maybe it comes back with 3 or 4 options. But all of those check marks need to be there in terms of communication with that neighborhood, pros and cons. We speak to them and see what they say. Is there sufficient parking? All of those things need to be addressed. I'm not sure we've done that with what we have before us. And maybe it's not, I'm not blaming staff because it may not have been necessarily the direction that they got. And I'm a little confused even how this got here. Maybe I missed the notice of motion or anyways, that's my feeling. It should be an area in the town divided equally where it's fenced off, it's open to the public, but it's not integrated with any parks or splash pads, or definitely not any of that. So that's where I stand. If there's an amendment or something on the floor that moves in that direction, I'd be supportive of it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions, or I'll ask Councillor Gilliland if she has an amendment.
With number 4, just to say to refer back to staff with that exact sentence, and then just include on the end to include all park locations and trail locations. So when it does come back, it's going to include the strategy plan, but also all the options that are available to us with locations in regards to locations to where it could work. So we have a fulsome understanding of the strategy and the opportunities. So I think the strategy and the opportunities are different. Is that what Councillor Gallo was saying? Okay, because that's what I was trying to put my words together.
So what I'm going to do, just to make this clean, we're going to vote on, I'm assuming 1 and 3 separately. We'll vote on 2 separately. It sounds like it's going to fail. And then we'll put something on the floor. Okay? Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm separating. Well, 1 is just a receipt. So 1 and 3. Okay, so 1 and 3, and then 2, because what I'm hearing is 2 is going to fail. So then it just makes it easier. And then we'll just put something, instead of doing an amendment, come back as amended, separate them because, okay. Yeah. But that's what I'm just trying to clean it up for all of us. So let's just do it. So we're going to vote on 1 and 3, which is 1 is to receive, and the third one is in regards to David Tomlinson Nature Reserve Park in regards to no dogs. Okay? So everyone knows what we're voting on right now. 1 and 3. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Number 2, clause number 2, which is that the proposed off-leash pilot program locations at Darkwood Detention and Tim Jones Trail be approved. All those in favor? Opposed? That fails. Councilor Gilliland, what would you like to put on the floor?
So the original, no, it's not up there. To refer back to, here we are. Refer back to staff with an off-leash pilot program, pilot program requests staff develop an off-leash strategy and include all options on park areas and trails.
Did you get that, Mr. Clerk?
Or park locations and trails.
1 sec, Council. Let's see it first. Someone want to second that? Council, yeah, we're getting it up on the screen.
Report back. I need the report back. Sorry, I didn't say it all
Just
properly.
let me get it on the screen. Let me just get it on the screen.
I didn't say it all correctly. But I think he gets the gist of what I'm trying to say.
before we go through who's on the spin, I gotta get, we're gonna get it on the screen. I gotta get a seconder and then we'll go through the list, okay? Because it's not on the floor yet.
Hi, honey, sorry, butt dial.
Oh, yeah, which I think should be part of the fiscal strategy.
Councilor Gardner.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, your mic's on. I was just letting you know.
Just know
Yes, I just
nobody's
realized
going
that.
on
Thank
doctor.
you.
Okay.
And we can't always say no.
We're just waiting to get it on the screen. I'll let you know when it's up. I'll read it for you as well.
Thank you.
Do you even refer back to staff with the amendment? Say that word.
All right, so what we have on the screen, that staff develop an off-leash strategy that includes locations and costs and report back.
Okay,
Seconder.
well, park and trail locations. I mean, do I have to be that specific? Like Mr. Downey, do I have to be that specific? Do we need to say park and trail locations so we know what all
Mr.
options
Clerk, can
are?
you just throw park and trail locations in there, please? Thank you. So that staff develop an off-leash strategy that includes park and trail locations and costs and report back. Seconder? Councilor Humphreys.
Can we add a date to that?
Council, you're more than welcome to add a date.
I want to know how soon Mr. Downey could get that report back. So I'd like it sooner than later. So would July be something that he could do?
Mr. Downey?
See, Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't feel comfortable with July. I'm not quite sure when we would be our last council meeting with this term of council. We'll do our best to get back with this term of council. I won't argue that, but it's still a little unclear as to exactly what council is trying to accomplish here. And that's really where I'm having some difficulty, even though it says an off-leash strategy. So if you close your eyes, are you okay with an off-leash area in Stuart Burnett Park? Knowing there's a ball game going on and a soccer game going on, and there's a playground in there, and we create an area within Stuart Burnett Park, but it's within a fenced area. But that's maybe not the intent that.
Well,
the
Mr.
public
Downey,
have
I would, and I appreciate that. And I think that,
And that's. I'm
yeah,
having some
no, and I
difficulty.
appreciate that, Mr. Downey. I would say that I think with council asking for a strategy, they want to have all options presented to them regardless of what they are. And then I think council of the day, whether it's this one or the next one, would go through that fulsome report and decide at that time what they would like to see happen or occur. And I think that's kind of what the direction is that what council's asking. I see a lot of heads nodding yes, so I'm assuming that's what they're looking for. They're just looking for all options on the table. Mr. CEO?
To Mr. Mayor, there was adding more confused to this. I really, as I sit here, I really don't know how this can be done outside of the context of a past park master plan, quite frankly. So, to suggest one comes before the other, I just think, I don't know how you even do that. I mean, you're going to be revisiting the work one way or the other, unless you kind of do them in conjunction with each other, I would think. But anyway, just throwing that out there.
I won't disagree, but I'm at council's whim. So, council.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing, but I don't want to be waiting another season, another this and another that. And I think that's the problem here. And I think that staff is capable of identifying which locations are available to our town now and can present us with some sort of feasible strategy to make it work.
Okay. I got speakers. Councilor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, I really just believe, I think we're here because we're actually talking about this now in more detail, and the discussion around communication safety is probably, of top of mind, along with other alternatives. And I think with this motion, which, to do this for me is okay. Maybe staff will come back and say it needs to be part of the master plan. like staff to have an opportunity to, to understand what that means. But I do believe that we need to ensure that through the pilot or how this is going to come back, that safety is of utmost importance. And I think that was a piece that even when we were discussing it way back as an idea, just the thought of people sharing an area that could be open and have dogs off leash, as well behaved as they can be. And I'm a dog owner and love dogs. You just never know what could happen at a certain situation scenario. So whatever we do, we have to make sure it's safe. And I think Councillor Gallen mentioned fencing, and it looks like other municipalities have the same idea, but there's fencing. And I don't believe this was part of that discussion in this area. So I just like another kick for staff to take a look at this. I mean, off-leash strategy was part of the alternatives and the recommendations. So I think we can still go there and just make sure that it comes back with that information. Again, safety and communication is part of that as well for me. Thanks. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gallup.
Hi, kind of bouncing back and forth. Well, one of my, I guess, issues, and it's just, if it comes back, and we can have that discussion. But in terms of trail locations, unless we've checked off the box of safety, it's a fenced area beside a trail where you have an option of continue on the trail with your child or go into a gated area and release your dog. To have both in one, I can't wrap my head around that, where you're walking with your child and all of a sudden you enter into an area that dogs are running free. I just don't know how those dynamics would work. I can only see it. And maybe there's other options out there where it's beside a trail, but it's still fenced off and safety is achieved. So maybe those things would come back to us. But if it's the intent to have an off-leash park right in the middle of a trail, I can't see that, and I wouldn't be able to support that. I'm troubled a little bit that staff doesn't have clear direction as to what we want, maybe because we don't really know exactly what we want. And maybe it is, and I don't like the delaying of it, but maybe it really is part of the master plan strategy. So that's where I am right now.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. And that's why we need a strategy, because there's a fundamental issue that council's not provided direction on or weighed in on, and that is, what does it look like? It's been raised by all of us and by Mr. Downey as well, is that fundamental issue of there are people that, they want to go and enjoy the splash pad or the park or whatever, and they don't necessarily want to interact with dogs running free. And at the same time, there's another group that wants to be able to go to these amenities and let their dogs run free. And we need to provide that direction through a strategy to our staff to say, okay, here's what it's going to look like and how it's going to develop before we start picking the places. So, within the report, it used that example of High Park, where it says that here's an example of, a well-designed, multi-use, inclusive park. It has off-leash trails, it has park space, but they are fenced, gated, large tracks with bypasses that allow people who do not want to interact with dogs running free to be able to still, enjoy the use of the park. And at the same time, there are sections for those people that want to be allowed to let their dogs run free. And so the strategy is supposed to be able to give some degree of direction to Mr. Downey. Says, yeah, that's fine. Pick a park, but it's going to be gated and fenced off. And so you're going to split it down the middle. If it's Stuart Barnett, then this section is for this and this is that. But we need to be able to develop that strategy and come to an agreement, because as Councillor Gallo just said, yeah, staff are having trouble figuring out what to do because we're having trouble figuring out what exactly we want. And we need to do that first through a strategy so that the direction is clear. And then Mr. Downey and the staff can go off and say, okay, it's clear in my mind. These are the parameters under which we can build these. And so here, here, and here are your best options, then decide. And so I do think it can be done in conjunction with the development of the Parks Master Plan, because that initial report to me is less about potential locations and are they all going to be gated? Are there going to be interactions between those that want and don't want? How is it going to look? We'll decide that. And then they can go off and it can be integrated in the Parks Master Strategy, because even if staff came back with 6 or 7 options, we're all going to make that same comments about, well, before we pick that place, how do the public feel about it? And so again, it's that process. That process can get fleshed out a little bit through the development of the Parks and Rec Master Plan. But let's start with the strategy. What does one of these look like? And if we're going to emulate some of these other municipalities that have been successful, it seems like they've all fenced and gated them off. But I'll look forward to that strategy report. I'm supportive of it, but we need to decide what it looks like so staff are clear in how to develop this.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To me, the only way that this can actually be done is in a large park. We, I think, only have 2, Fleury and Machel. And then, of course, in any new park that's designed, we do have the southeast corner of Bayview and Wellington. I don't know, I can't see how we could fit this easily into any park that we have, but perhaps Mr. Downey has some ideas. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the area under the hydro corridors, now, I am not sure. I thought that hydro said that those were off limits to us, but I spoke with a resident recently and apparently they're using the area under the hydro corridor. So I'm wondering, is there any, I mean, what a great dog run that would be. Is there, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Downey, is there any possibility that we could use the area under the hydro corridor?
Mr. Downey?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, actually today, when I was inspecting the fire hall, which is right adjacent to the fire hall, right adjacent to the hydro corridor is right adjacent to the fire hall. Someone brought the dog there, took it off the leash and let it run. And a lot of people do that. It's a fenced area, so it's somewhat controlled, except at either end. However, in my personal conversations with Hydro, they have erected no trespassing signs, so they are not happy that people are even walking on the land, let alone having their dogs on the land. And that if we wanted access to the lands, that would only come at a cost to the municipality.
Thank you, Mr. Downey, through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, that cost may be worth a discussion because we don't seem to be getting anywhere with this. Any dog park is going to have a cost, and it's also going to have the cost of liability and safety. Taking an area like under the hydro, it would be very clear to everybody that this was for this purpose, and it's fenced in. And I don't know, Mr. Downey, can we say use at your own risk? In any case, I think it's worth a conversation about what kind of financial incentive they would want for this. It's an unused, mostly sanctioned, unused area, and it could be put to great use. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Thank you. Just a quick comment to kind of add based on some of the things that I heard around the table. I think that myself included and the rest of council members, I believe that the priority would be if there was an opportunity to have a park that could be fenced, we would prefer to have it fenced if that's of any direction with the strategy versus just randomly being in a park and being off leash at one moment and then on leash at the next. I'm pretty certain that's where we feel the deficits are. And I'm really hoping that we can come back with just an option, looking at a map where these are all located, and we can identify parking, we can identify the pros and cons of each location, and here's why. And I think that's kind of at least what I'm hoping from this. So it's not really focusing on one location of something, but a fulsome view of everything. And if we can get that back, that would be great. Chain link fence, that's a quick little cost that we can accommodate to give some safety in a parked area. I think that that's something we'd like to see.
Thank you. Councilor Garner, do you have your hand up again, or is it just still up?
Oh, no, Mr. Mayor was up from the beginning.
Okay, just making
It's
sure.
gone.
I just got one comment. I mean, I think it should be done in conjunction with the master plan, Parks master plan. I don't see how we can do the two of them separately. I think they need to be done together, but I guess, you know, there's some concern about timing, but Mr. Downey, roughly when do we think that the Parks master plan could possibly be in front of council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I apologize. I don't know what the timeline is. I know the discussions are starting on June the 6th. I really don't know when they're finishing. We are working with community services on that as a joint operation. So I'm sorry, I don't know when the recommendations for the master plan are coming back. Perhaps Ms. McDougall will be able to answer that better than I. It won't be for this term of council, is my understanding.
And then I just have one more question. If this report that we're talking about today comes back before the end of the term, would the dog park be up and running before the new year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, it wouldn't. If we are going the direction which I believe we are going, which is a fenced off area with some signage, and there's a capital expenditure involved there, which we have not got capital identified. So this would turn into a 2023 capital budget item.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. And so for that reason, I think that when we're talking about the timing, that's why I think that ultimately it should be done with the Parks Master Plan, because I think that it's not going to impact the timing, because essentially, as we just heard, it's this report's going to come back. It's going to probably have to go to a budget, which means you'll roughly be in and around the same time. I personally believe usually the Parks Master Plan, you're looking at about roughly around 6 months. I know that Mr. Downey doesn't want to give me a number, but I'm thinking roughly around 6-7 months. So you'd be in and around the same timeline. You'd be able to get something up, and we'd be able to properly have a discussion and a strategy moving forward through the Parks Master Plan. So that would be my ideal scenario to go forward. But once again, I'm at council's discretion. So if there's no other comments, questions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. (9.2) Green Development Standards, proposed phase 1 implementation plan. We have a presentation. Matthew. I'm glad you came and tested your mic earlier. So
I've had some issues in the past. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm just going to share my screen. You should have the presentation in your agenda package, but for ease, I'll put it up here. Bear with me. Is it displaying yet?
Still not seeing anything yet.
Okay,
oh, there we go.
Okay, great. Let me put it into slideshow mode. Okay. Well, thank you again very much. I'm going to dive right into it. So the recently named and branded Green and Growing Aurora's new green development standards are being presented to you tonight. Our phase 1 implementation plan. So we are recommending approval of this, but I'm going to take you through it and then we'll get some questions. And we have with me tonight Nadia Dalhaniuk from Prime Research and Planning, who will be able to assist with any technical questions as well. So without further ado, I'll jump into it. So what are the green development standards and how did we get here? So we discussed this with Council GC in November 2021, but we've been working on this since May of last year. We retained prime strategy and planning. Essentially, our goal was to develop a set of criteria measured against new development to promote environmentally conscious projects based on 5 key areas: energy, water, ecology, complete communities, and building materials waste diversion. So I'll run through the timeline quickly of how things progressed. So after things were established in May, we set up a project steering committee. There was representation from all of the planning groups and building, engineering, so on and so forth. We had a very thorough discussion paper developed by Prime Research, which looked at best practices across not just Canada, but globally. But we really looked at our partners and what was feasible in terms of the Ontario Building Code and provincial policy and the municipal policies. And that resource was very helpful in terms of how we sort of set up the performance measures, which you'll see in a couple moments. So we went to council in November, and we also did some heavy consultation in November of last year. We had 2 different sessions, one geared towards the development industry, build, ResCon. The utility companies and school boards were sort of a public stakeholder consultation session. So in both of those 2 sessions, we did have some members of council attend as well. We also went to the town's advisory committee. So we went to heritage, accessibility, and we returned to EAC twice with updates as we progressed. And then also attached to tonight's report, there is a comprehensive handbook, which sort of sets up the spirit of each performance measure, which you'll see. And it's really meant to guide the applicant and staff through the program. So I'll take you through sort of how it works. So like I mentioned, there's some guidance in the Ontario Planning Act, the Municipal Act, that really gives us some ability to impose a GDS. We are also looking at putting in a condition, we are planning to put in a condition in the subdivision and site plan agreement. So the intention now, as it stands for phase 1, because this will be released in 2 phases if you got that far in the report, is to basically gather all the materials that we've asked for and start reviewing things and build towards a phase 2 where we will look to include incentives. So the way the process works now is at pre-consultation. So any new residential development that has at least 5 units and any major site plan, this will be applied to. And so they'll be identified at the pre-con stage. During submission, there'll be an interactive web form at which the applicant will be able to run through their project and basically attest to which of the performance measures they will achieve. I'm going to break down how we're going to mark those and score those in a second. And so that form will be submitted by the applicant. It'll be received by the planning team and the lead development planner on the file, who will then circulate it as they normally do with a complete submission to the groups, where comments will be basically received. And then at the agreement stage, there'll be a condition that essentially says we will do what we've said or demonstrated we will be doing what we've done in our plans. And I'm sure there'll be questions on how we're going to double check that stuff, but we'll get to that in a bit. So there are basically 2 different types of GDSs we've seen in municipalities similar to Aurora. Most of them do a combination of hybrid. I've called it a hybrid, but mostly it's a points-based system or a tiered model. Points. The biggest concern with a points system is that you find developers will kind of go top heavy in a certain area and maybe neglect other areas of a GDS. So what we've done is, like I've mentioned, we have 2 tiers. So tier 1 is enough in there already, that's in the building code, but there are levels where we've elevated things. So tier 1, the applicant must hit all of those requirements. And then tier 2, there's a bit of flexibility. So there'll be 5, and you'll see this in the handbook. There'll be 5 or 6, in some cases 4 optional measures in which they might have to hit 1 or 2 of those additional criteria. And they're designed to be a little bit more rigorous in terms of sustainability performance, for example. And then The reason we've included the score is so we can basically tally a total, and then we're looking to do something like a GDS awards annually, where we would rate applications, and then potentially when we incorporate incentives, which could be part of phase 2, which we're not implementing right now, those points would be of value to achieve certain scores. So we're sort of putting it in there now to get used to it and see how things work. So this is an example of a page in the handbook where this is, again, meant to be really a tool for the developer, but also for staff. It tells you what the metric is applied to. I believe there are a total of 51 metrics. So you'll see W1, 2.3. So that indicates water. Tier 2, metric 3. So, and again, you'll see through here, this is just the compliance, how to demonstrate, where to demonstrate, kind of a complete toolbook. And that's for each of the requirements. So quickly, some of the big feedback we received from the development industry was a request for a pilot program, flexibility in measurable criteria, and I'll speak to that in a second. Recognition and fiscal incentives was a big one. And then transitioning or grandfathering projects received before implementation. And what that means is essentially someone that might be coming in for a zoning application right now, where the GDS is not yet implemented. If they were to come back with a site plan, once the GDS is implemented, could they be eligible for future incentives, which again are not yet being introduced, but in that regard, would they be able to kind of jump on board if they're demonstrating the GDS? And in my opinion, that's a great thing. So something we want to look at. To address the pilot program feedback, we've really made this sort of, I don't want to use the term flexible, but what we've communicated to Build and in some of the developers we've already met with is that if there's a metric that seems too rigorous or is for good reason unattainable, we'd like to see an elevation in another area. So we don't want to halt development projects. We know there are things like affordability that's top of mind for everybody. Affordable housing is obviously a huge concern in Ontario and across Canada. So we want to make sure that this rollout is efficient and we have great uptake during phase 1, which is why there are no incentives yet. And we really want to see that, again, that uptake from the development community in sort of a cooperative way. So next steps, after tonight, we'll see what council will say, but hopefully we plan for July 1st implementation of this phase 1. We're in the middle of developing the webpage, which I'm going to take you through very quickly as soon as I'm done this next slide. But there'll be a couple videos made, one for the public that speaks to the GDS and the good news story that it is and how we'll be implementing things, and then a very instructional video that allows a quick snippet of how you'll submit your application, how it'll be reviewed by staff, which is really directed to the development community specifically. We're also going to immediately, if approved, let Build know, and we've already been letting developers know that are coming in with pre-con that this could be on deck come July 1st. So we've already sort of been letting people know kind of indirectly that this could be something they can expect. And then phase 2. So over the next year, we're going to assess, we're going to measure how the scoring is, the uptake. And then during that time, we're really going to look at incentives and how we can potentially introduce monetary incentives. There are programs like LEED and Passive House, which are kind of third-party certifications, which other municipalities integrate into their GDS to achieve some of these fiscal incentives, which sometimes solves the issue of inspection and how you will ensure some of these very specific criteria are met. That being said, one thing I should add is phase 1, again, is really designed to kind of look at things we're already looking at, but in an elevated way. So if we're looking at peak flow or something like that, we've basically elevated that requirement. So someone's already looking at that metric. They're just looking for a higher number now in some regards. So quickly, I'm going to stop sharing this screen and I'm going to bring you to the web page very quickly. Am I okay for time? Getting there, I'm sure. Here we go.
No, you have time. Go ahead.
Okay. Bear with me.
No, he's just looking.
Sorry, one sec. I'm just trying to navigate to my webpage through Zoom. Okay. There we go. Okay. So this is an example, and again, this is currently under development. So if you see a typo or a formatting error, it's not yet public, but essentially this would be our landing page, where you'd have a brief intro into the GDS. There's a flow chart. Sorry, my mouse is being a bit wonky. Basically, again, within the report, you would have seen this, kind of outlines the flow of things, what it applies to. And then we also have the handbook already built in. So the same handbook that you would have seen in a PDF format, it won't really exist in the format you see it. It'll exist in this format. And essentially it's the same group of criteria. So you'll see the tables, where it applies, the requirement itself, how to demonstrate compliance. So the web form is the key piece here. And then ultimately, I bring you to the web form, which again, very HTML looking right now, not too attractive, if you will use that term for a web page. But again, this is where you would demonstrate compliance, and everything here is just tier 1 right now, and it's an intuitive web page. And what I mean by that is if you answer yes to this question, you'll be generated a score. If you answer no or neglect to answer any of these questions and skip it, you'll see in a second, it will not let me. It'd be really embarrassing if for some reason it does, but it shouldn't. Yeah, you'll see a bunch of red. And if you do say no to one of these things, it's not that you can't proceed. There'll be a comment box that'll pop up, which will allow the developer to basically say, I'm not able to meet this criteria for this reason. And then the planner will be able to follow up and say, there you go, this is the reason, what else can we do, or something like that. And I'll be personally in all of the pre-con meetings. And so I think it'll be a pretty seamless transition. I'm sure you'll have questions, so I'll stop sharing my screen and I can put anything else up that you want to take a look at, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Matthew. Council, the recommendation is that report number PDS 22-072 be received, and 2, that the Green Development Standards Phase 1 implementation plan be approved. Someone like to move that recommendation? Councilor Thompson, Councilor Gallo. Comments or questions to the report or to the presentation? Councilor Gilliland.
Hello, thank you. No real questions. I've been involved in this with the EAC and offline before when there was some development. I think, on one of the working groups as well. I think this is absolutely fantastic. It's been long overdue, and I feel like we're a step ahead of some other municipalities. Having sat in some of the climate caucus meetings, I know a lot of other municipalities are looking to other municipalities who actually have this implemented. And this is a good step forward in ensuring that we can encourage more sustainability, more permeable surface, energy reduction. I think we're all trying to look at ways to where we could all move the needle forward for the greater good. So thank you for this great work. I'm really happy with what we've seen. I like the fact there's some flexibility there, so you can achieve other points and other different criteria. I think that was heard loud and clear with some of the feedback. So I'm happy to hear that you are going to allow some of that flex. And there's a lot of different opportunity there for them to choose. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you. And certainly thank you for all the work and the presentation as well. Just, I know that it's a later phase, but just going back to those monetary incentives, I just want to understand it a little bit better. Can you use some examples of other municipalities that provide monetary incentives so that I get a sense of what it's in reference to, and then also whether or not those monetary incentives are coming from the municipality or other levels of government or other grants or programs, perhaps?
Matthew?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll ask Nadia if she has examples of which municipalities, but I know some offer refunds on development charges specifically, which is something that I would be cautious in doing from a professional recommendation. There are, though, third-party, again, certifications that are sort of, for lack of a better word, for almost clout of your project and doing good, like feeling good about your project and having that award of a lead designation or something like that. Specifically, I think there may be creativity in looking at the CIP. That's one thing we're looking at as we develop our community improvement plan for the promenade. Nadia, can you reference any examples of municipalities that actually are doing DCs or anything like that?
Thank you, Matthew. Can everybody hear me okay? Just give me a thumbs up, Matt, maybe.
Yep.
You're right. City of Toronto, for example, does the development charge refund program, probably the most notable green development standards program in Ontario at the moment. York Region is, I mean, obviously the town of Aurora being the lower tier municipality, we did reference the York Region's sustainable development programs, their incentive programs through our initial research. As Matthew mentioned, there was extensive discussion through the process of this project about tying incentives to the CIP, but I think that it is a challenge. It is something that's challenging that a lot of municipalities are still figuring out. Through our research, we did notice that there are several non-financial incentives, such as those recognition programs that Matthew mentioned, but there is significant opportunity. And the Clean Air Partnership has a good database of resources for municipalities that are working this out, that are always there to reference back to as communities figure this out. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you. And again, I know it's for a later stage. I just be very cautious when it comes to monetary incentives, especially, I would agree with Matthew's comment about being cautious about tying into development charges. The reference to the CIP plan, when we talked about it from an economic development perspective, the idea was that, there's a community benefit there because as the value of the property is enhanced as a result of some of the components we put into place, that in theory, the value of the property increases and then the property tax you receive from it, in a sense, pays it off in the long term. And so there was a community benefit to go to speak to it, but we'll deal with it when that phase comes. But I think I'd be concerned about monetary incentives, non-monetary ones, maybe try and find ways to fast track applications or do certain things that are not a direct financial incentive. That's another conversation for me, but great work so far. And looking forward to getting some more reports in terms of how it's being implemented and the next stages.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. I also wanted to, first off, compliment everyone involved. I think it's definitely a direction that we need to move in. I'm happy we're proceeding, and I look forward to the implementation of the various phases. The incentives also, I earmarked them as a concern. It is down the road, but definitely not, tax-based or anything like that. It just doesn't make sense to me. But overall, I'm really happy with it. I'm happy with the direction. I'm happy that we didn't get a lot of pushback from the development community, which tells me that we're taking a balanced approach and not overly aggressive, but still trying to make a difference. So well done.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I'm very impressed with this work. I thank Matthew and Nadia and anybody else who was involved. I really like the idea of the annual GDS award. I think the handbook is just, it's straightforward, it's easy, it's a great idea. I like that you've looked at Passive House and looked at their criteria scoring scheme. I don't know what Masonry Works is. Would you be able to say what that is?
Matthew?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Masonry Works, I believe there's another acronym as well for them, but they represented a masonry building council, materials council of, I believe it was Canada, Nadia. They're national, or it might have been Ontario. But we spoke with them specifically. It was actually a side discussion that had happened independent of our work, and we had realized we could connect. And basically the discussion was about recycled masonry materials and sort of the shift in concrete production and how they're really progressing in terms of those specific hard surfaces. Sorry.
ahead,
I can send you the full acronym. I can look it up. We have a record of consultation. So
thank you. And they would be also looking at different materials that could be used. That's Great. And as to, what Councillor Gallo said, I think that it's also, you've taken a good approach to this, but I think that probably the building industry has been expecting this. I don't even know if we're in the middle of the pack with respect to this, but yeah, there would be no surprise here. I'm glad to know that. I like that you're not using a points-based system so that we're heavy-handed looking at one particular aspect. There are, it says, I don't know, 51 qualifying questions. So you submit the qualifying answers, or the answers that hopefully will qualify. So what is the process from there? How can they be verified? What happens after that?
Matthew?
Through you, Mayor. Essentially what will happen is, so some of these things, I would say maybe 20 of the 50 are already components that we're reviewing as part of the normal planning review. There are also, though, guidance in some of the performance measures that will ask you, for example, I'll use trees, for example. I believe the town has a 2-year warranty on trees. There's a measure that specifically recommends a 5-year maintenance plan that would be on the onus of the developer to ensure that that landscape architecture drawing was fulfilled in the way it was, if anything needs to be replaced. And so we've put in some things in those areas where we're acknowledging that sometimes it takes, for example, mature trees more than 2 years to establish themselves. Through the entire points-based program. So the first tier is I believe 20 points, and then the optional is, I guess, the total of 50, but you don't have to hit all those 51s. You have to hit probably, I think, an additional 10 to 12 of those. And the scoring comes in when we'll be tallying sort of that award system, or again, with some kind of incentive program. But through inspection, we've worked with our building team as well to look at some of these things. But that is also part of the reason we've sort of put that sunset clause in the agreements to say that you will honor the commitments you've shown on your plans. And especially if we do go down that route of incentives, we would need to look into ensuring that those commitments were made, and that might look a little different in terms of resources and staff component and how you would do some of those things. There are some of the stuff with, for example, air tightness, you'd have to hire some kind of energy consultant to come in after the fact and do that assessment. We don't currently require that with the GDS, but these are all things that we hope to learn over the next year as well. Yeah.
Thank you. And maybe the onus would be up to the developer for us to hire somebody to ensure that it is. Like, wherever we can save money, we have to. The thing you mentioned about trees is interesting, because what I see is happening now, and I'm not even sure 5 years would help, is, the trees will be planted, they'll be taken care of, and then through time, they'll completely be ignored and they'll die. And I have that next to my building. So if there's any way that you can, maybe, I know sometimes we ask developers to put down, it's not a deposit, but it's an amount of money that goes on and on and on and on, so that we can make sure that things are taken care of. And if they take care of them, then we can give them back the money. But in the meantime, we have a resource that we might need to use. From what I've seen, we could have used it a lot to date. The other thing is, will we be, I'm sorry, I did look through everything, but I didn't notice native trees. So are we going to be specifying what kind of, well, I know that we do that in our own, the town of Aurora does that with respect to landscaping, but just with respect to the green, drought resistant, perhaps maybe hardier trees with deeper roots. Was there any thought to that?
Matthew?
Through you, Mayor. Yes, there is. I I'm looking for the specific requirement, but there's two elevated requirements that say you must plant, I believe, 50% native. And the reason we've said only 50% is because there are species that are not invasive per se, but they'll be resilient to salt, for example. So they're great on shoulders and curbs. They do serve an ecological function, but they may not be native. In, I believe, tier 2 of ecology, there's one of the optional ones that says you must plant 75% native species. So that's the sort of slight elevation of the criteria. And one of the things we're meaning to do on the website is to put up a resource from LSRCA. We've already spoken to this, sort of a recommended planting list. And I believe we do already have something internally in our guidelines, but just a more elaborate resource that will say, in these sort of landscapes or certain projects, we'd like to see this in terms of, drainage, if there's an issue with drainage or something to do with flow. There are certain species that, hold soil retention a bit better than others. So we're hoping to provide that resource as well. But I believe there's a requirement that says no, absolutely no invasive species. So we've covered that. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. Through Mr. Mayor, with respect to having 50% of the trees be native, you said that's in phase 2. It wouldn't cost the developer probably any more to plant a native or non-native species. So maybe that's something that could be moved up to phase 1 as a requirement. Unless you know something that I don't know, I don't think it would be more costly.
Matthew?
Through you, Chair, I might ask Nadia to jump in on this one. Is there anything that you would see that would stop us from potentially elevating that number? Maybe we could go 75 and 100, something we could look at.
Thanks, Matthew, through you, Mayor. Matthew, I do believe that the 50% requirement is mandatory tier 1, 75% being tier 2. I don't see why. Perhaps it would. There could be opportunity for discussion, as Matthew mentioned, with the Conservation Authority. There was a bit of discussion about the types of trees and the percentages that could be required with them, and they did review. But perhaps as the GDS evolves over time, there would be opportunity to strengthen that tier 1 mandatory requirement.
Councillor?
Thank you. I think we don't want to ask developers to, of course, with the profit margin. So if it's something that wouldn't cost them more money, then let's try and fit it into phase 1. Thank you very much for the work. It's really a pleasure to read this report.
Thank you. Councillor Humphries?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And many questions were answered around from listening to the questions of my peers. And I just want to say, first of all, thank you very much to staff. This is a very great, incredible piece of work. The handbook, I think it's an, exceptional work. And I was looking through a lot of the compliancy pieces, and now we're going to make sure that when we get some new development or green development, that we hold, the developers and the people making those enhancements accountable to that. I just have 2 questions. So this is going to be applying not just to new development, but existing and changes to current buildings and environmental areas within our town. Just wanted to get some feedback from perhaps Mr. Volpin-Testa.
Matthew?
Yeah, you got it the second time. So exactly, I think we'll be looking for specific requirements that will elevate the first tier. Sorry, 1 second. I just want to. Can you repeat the second half of your question?
Sure. So, through Mr. Mayor. So basically, a lot of this is, for new development moving forward. It's a green, development movement. We have a lot of buildings within Aurora. We're going to look at grandfathering some of these, or perhaps, for example, someone comes along and says, I just want to add make some changes to my current existing building. Is there any way that we can help them try and direct them through green development standards in this type of program, or is it mostly focused on brand new development or brand new buildings or of that nature?
Matthew?
Through you, Chair. Sorry, I think I misunderstood it or misheard
No
your first
problem.
question. Yeah, so everything related to anything new development and any major site plan, and to be considered a major site plan, I believe it's a more than 50% redevelopment rate.
Okay,
So you'd have to be expanding your footprint by a certain percentage.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. No, that makes sense. Absolutely. I mean, love to make everyone start from scratch, but we can't really force, but I love this move forward. Absolutely. And again, I really appreciate the detail. So sorry, I had one more question and where did I write it? I'm sorry. Okay, you know what? Again, just thank you very much. Great work. You could tell you know it inside and out. You know, you're very, did a lot of work on this. And maybe through Mr. Mayor, this is something that we could show off at FCM, because we're one of the first to have this type of green development handbook and this type of opportunity moving forward. I think something we really need to show off and showcase. So thank you very much to yourself and the team, everyone that have put this together. I'm really looking forward to. There's so many angles that this is touching. You know, just every angle of what you know, we do business within our town. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo, second time.
Thank you. And I'll be quick. I just listening to some of the comments and just wanted to kind of buttress what I was saying in terms of a balanced approach. Let's not kid ourselves. Whenever we mandate something above and beyond to a developer and it costs them money, we need to have a solid foundation of why we're doing it, because they're very protective of their bottom line, let's face it. And those costs will go directly to the homeowner, our new residents. And unless there's a significant rationale behind doing that, it's a tough call. And we have to have that balance, because we can't always say, oh, you know, just let the developer pay for it. Well, they're not going to necessarily pay for it. It's the homeowner that's going to end up paying for it. But if we have proper justification and a real reason why there's a benefit to it, it's okay. And I'm okay with that, knowing full well that will transfer along to that new homeowner, but it's a benefit to the community, and there's a rationale for why we're doing it. That's why we need to have a balanced approach, in that we can't be too aggressive, yet we have to do enough to make an impact.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? None before I call the vote. Matthew, thank you very much. Nadia, thank you. And staff, great document. And as was just mentioned, it needs to be defendable, because we all know that when they don't like it, where are they going? They're appealing it. And if it's not defendable, we'll lose every time as a municipality. And so we need to be able to defend whatever we're putting forward in any policies or in any legislation that we create at the municipal level. But you know what, it's great document. And I think it's going to go hand in hand with obviously with our official plan as we update and review it. I know that there's a lot of this within it, within the sections of building a greener community. We've updated a lot of the wording to coexist with this document as well. So it's, you know, we've strengthened our policies in regards to creating a greener community. And I think this is a good thing for our town. So thank you very much, everyone. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 9.3, modernized fence bylaw. Of a recommendation that report number CS 22-034 be received, and 2, that a new fence bylaw be brought forward to a future council meeting for enactment to repeal and replace the current fence bylaw number 4753-05P. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Humphreys, second. Councillor Thompson, any comments or questions on this one? Call the vote. Councillor Gardner. Oh, you okay? No, don't worry. No one put up their hands.
That was my fault.
Yeah. You were blank there for a bit, so.
Yeah. Looking at my agenda.
Go ahead.
You scribed. So I want to thank staff. This was very important for the town. It makes things a lot clearer. It gives us more power, gives staff more power, and it gives us a great tool, which is I think AMPS, but to actually be able to charge, for the town to actually be able to charge for infractions. And this is something I know Ms. Van Leeuwen has wanted to have a tool like this for various bylaw issues. And I think it's terrific. And I thank her and whoever else worked on this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a very well-constructed document, and so I'm in complete support. Just a question through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen. In section 4.2, number 3, that section says no person shall erect, own, or maintain, or cause or permit the erection or maintenance of any fence. And on C, it says that wholly or partially conducts electricity. And then on number 3, it says has signs installed at not more than 12 meter intervals along the fence, warning that the fence carries electricity. So if our bylaw is stating that you can't have a fence that has any electricity, why does it say this should not have signs installed no more than 12 meter intervals along the fence, warning that the fence does carry electricity? I'm just wondering whether I'm not reading it correctly or it seems to contradict one another.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would have to read it in full. There is some final review that needs to occur with legal services. And so I'll make a note that this should be clarified.
Okay. Councillor?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. I'm in support of this. I just, I want to call it a necessary evil, but I don't like the word evil, but it's, I just want to mention that it bothers me that we're at a point where we have to have this monetary penalty system. I just don't like it. I see the necessity of it, but I just want to communicate my I guess that I'm disappointed that as a society we have to move in this direction with these types of things, because it's to me reflective of society, that we have to have that level of enforcement, and it's a sad thing for me to have to approve and to have to move forward with. I wish we didn't have to, and I wish we could deal with issues in a better fashion. But this is a direction that we're going in.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next, 9.4, short-term rental bylaw amendments. Recommendations: 1, that report number CS 22-033 be received. 2, that the amendments to the proposed demerit point system be approved. And 3, that the recommended updates to Schedule I of the town's fees and charges bylaw as presented in attachment 2 of this report be approved, and that the appropriate bylaw amendment be presented at a future council meeting for enactment. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Kim. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. I'm glad to see that there were some changes made since the last time this was brought to council. So it was really nice to see and very clear as to what those changes were. But I just wanted to get a little bit of clarification on the number 3, the implementation of a tiered structured fee structure for STR companies, which is based on the number of STRs in the community as opposed to a flat rate. So is that fee then just based on how many homes, say for sake of example, to Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Van Leeuwen? So if it was like if Airbnb had 10 homes and then the fees would fall under that bracket, if VRBO had 300, it would fall into another bracket? Or is this help me understand if this was like just a specific vendor or just a base rate based on all of Aurora?
Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's based on the number of properties that they have listed within the boundaries of Aurora.
Okay.
Councillor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So that's why thought, but I wanted to know what that meant. So do we know what the tiered system that we're in right now that's being presented?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was provided on attachment 2. So there is 4 tiers.
Okay, so I'm sorry, through Mr. Mayor and Ms. Van Leeuwen, what tier would we be falling under? I see the attachment.
It's attachment 2 it lists anywhere from 0 to 10 properties, and then 11 to 50 properties, and 51 to 100. So depending on how many properties each person has, they would fall. Councillor, if you see on the attachment number 2.
Okay, so is it per property a person owns that this is the fee, or is this?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is for the short-term rental companies that advertise these properties.
Exactly.
That initially it was what was presented was a one-time flat fee for these companies, but we have taken a tiered approach based on number of properties, and it isn't a one-time. There will be a renewal as well.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. So I think that's what I was asking. So if Airbnb was listing 10 properties in Aurora, that fee would be 500. If VRBO was listing 11 to 50, it would be 1,000. So it is specific to the vendor and what they own as what they hold or advertise as properties, not necessarily like if there's a townwide number, there's over 100 properties and it's 11,000 for everybody. Like I think that's just where my confusion is. Maybe I'm not looking at it properly, but maybe you could clarify that.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the short-term company that advertised, it would be based on the number of properties they're advertised on their site and within the boundaries of the town of Aurora. And that could change on an annual basis. So that's why we're tiering it. So this, currently one company may be advertising 10 properties. Next year, it could be 100.
Right. Okay. No, I thank you. I think that was like the question. I didn't paraphrase the question properly, but the answer was like specific to like that vendor. So, okay, I understand now. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I see Mr. Ray is online as well. I want to thank the department, Mr. Ray, for listening to the concern about the demerit points. I'm very pleased to see that they have been increased. Many have been increased. I wanted to make a comment, and I wouldn't mind having feedback from council. There are demerit points 3 for contravention of the noise bylaw, the property standards bylaw, and the clean communities with respect to grass and weeds and garbage and waste. So that's 3 out of, I believe it was 14 or 15. So 15, thank you. So I think what bylaw is going to hear most about, and I think what we as a council are going to hear most about, is neighborhood residents who are annoyed by noise and the property not looking very good. So could it be an escalating charge? I'm not sure if I sent you my email. I meant to, Mr. Ray, but if it happens once and we get complaints and then it happens again, because everybody's busy enough. We these kind of complaints are so difficult and time consuming. So through you, Mr. Mayor, your thoughts, please. Mr. Ray or Ms. Van Leeuwen.
Ray?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, so the plan is that if the administrative monetary penalty system, or AMPS, is implemented moving forward, that we will have the opportunity opportunity to introduce escalating fines for offenses that continue to happen within a said period. This would be something that would be proposed to council and is currently in place in other municipalities in the GTA to deal with continued issues. So we feel that it would be most appropriate as opposed to continuing to apply points. That if that is unsuccessful, that we have an alternative tool to address continued noncompliance.
Councilor.
And I'm expecting and hoping that the AMPs will come in. And I don't know when that's estimated. If it's not in the very near future, could you think about doing an escalation where you get 3 points and then the next complaint is 4 points or whatever it is? Because the whole idea, I think, behind this is not only to ensure the safety of the people who are visiting, but also the neighbors. And we want it to be as good an experience as possible for the neighbors. And so we know noise and how property is kept is usually very important to a neighborhood. And it is really a lot of trouble and work for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Notice of motion. We have 3 for next week. Regional report. Would someone like to move receipt for information of the regional report? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Kim. Comments, question, Councillor Thompson. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make mention that within the report, it speaks to the fact that our own Brian North was recognized for the award when he was awarded to the Ontario Medal for Good Citizenship. It does mention the fact that he's contributed to numerous community organizations and speaks to Easter Seal, Scouts Canada, York Small Business Enterprise, and of course, South Lake Regional Health Center Foundation. But for those that know Brian, that's just a small sample of the many of the causes and organizations that he supports and helps. He's our former Citizen of the Year for a reason. And certainly, kudos and congratulations to him being recognized on a provincial level. And who knows, maybe someday even more so, because we all know that Brian continues to serve the community in many, many ways. And congratulations to him.
Well said. Any other comments or questions in regards to the regional report? Before I call the vote, I just going to make mention of one in case not everyone read it, but York Region did lift their state of emergency. I believe there's still a few that have not lifted it, but they are in the process of lifting it. And if anyone doesn't know, we were the first in York Region to lift the state of emergency. So I just wanted to make mention of that. Call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. New business. Councilor Gillen.
Is this on? Thank you. Just a question for Mr. Downey, through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Downey, I know there was a resident who had asked some questions about, well, it was a two-pronged question. One was about snowplow damage that occurred on a corner. I know I kind of left it open-ended for staff to respond. And the second was about a garbage receptacle, which I would like to elaborate on more, but if you could just kind of give me an update on maybe the snowplow part first, that would be great.
Mr. Downey?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we received a concern from a resident through members of council. They had some concerns with regards to the repairs that were done to the snowplow damage from the sidewalk snowplow, and we are addressing that with the contractor. With regards to a garbage receptacle at Kennedy and Murray, there was a garbage receptacle there 4 years ago that was removed. It was at the northwest corner where the trail meets Kennedy and Murray, because the majority of the material within that garbage container was dog waste. Dog waste is not to be put into trash containers. It is to be taken home and put in green bins. We notified the residents of that, put signage up. They continued to drop their dog waste in the garbage container, and so we removed the garbage container. The resident has identified a concern that they would like to continue to drop dog waste in a receptacle and wants a receptacle put back at that corner. We are not recommending that we move forward and put a receptacle back there in order to hold dog waste. If we can look at expanding our dog waste receptacle program beyond next year, perhaps that's one of the locations we can look at. But we want to make sure that we encourage all residents to not use receptacles in the park to deposit dog waste. It is to be taken home and put in the green bin.
Councillor?
Thank you. Okay, I was going to expand on that, but you have. I know that this has been a topic for the operations department, what the use of a garbage can is for. I guess you and I can agree to disagree on this, that I believe the garbage can is there and we want to encourage people to pick up and put it away. Whether it's in a green bin or not, I believe our own Recycle Coach app even suggests that it goes in a garbage can. So I don't know if that's been fixed. So that was a bit of, I guess, it contradicted itself. But needless to say, I think we really want to encourage people not to leave, dog poop on someone's lawn, and we fight really hard in order to change the behavior to ensure people are picking up. And, people do pay a lot of taxes in this town, and the least they can do is if they have a garbage receptacle, they're going to put it in the garbage receptacle. I certainly don't think that we're taking it away because it's filled with Tim Hortons or Starbucks cups, which are recyclable. So I could argue about 100 different things that are put in that receptacle that should probably go in a recycle bin. So I think we should do a better job if that's the case. But in my opinion, I would like to see a garbage can there for people who are walking their dogs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys, new business?
Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno, if you can help me or direct me in the right direction. There's some residents that have been chasing down their developer builder on, I guess, getting their deposits back when the roads are, released to the municipality. Do you know what? I know it's not normally our area of concern, but is there anything we can do through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Muno, that is there anything within our jurisdiction? The residents are getting anxious and they feel they're not getting much attention from the developer or the builder.
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's something that we can certainly look into if you provide the information to me. Sometimes these deposits are between the owner and the developer, but send over the information and we can look into it.
Councillor?
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I said that one call. Thank you.
Councillor Kemp? New business? No. Councillor Thompson? Councillor Yell? Councillor Gardner, new business?
Thank you. Through to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, I apologize if I've missed this. Could you give us an update on the retaining wall that's serving Ridgewood Court and Underhill Crescent?
Mr. Downey? Oh, or Mr. Ramuno looked like you wanted to jump in on that one.
You, Mr. Mayor. Actually, Mr. Ramuno was actually going to be presenting that report at AUMT, I think, on Thursday, but I'll let you talk.
Mr. Ramuno, when's that report going to be coming?
That's coming in, I believe it's one of the meetings, second meeting, July. I'm sorry, June. June.
Second meeting of June, Councillor. So the 23rd, that'll be in front of us.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Downey, this is for you. I had a walk in Shepherd's Bush, which I didn't realize we actually own it now, but on the walk going south, just so it's south of where the playing fields are, it's just south of the car park. I may be a little bit disoriented, but there are so many trees there that they're dead and they've got limbs hanging. And apart from the fact that it's very unsightly, it also could be a safety issue. So I don't know how long they've been like that, but it seems like we might have inherited them. Do you have a plan to take care of that? And is there, I'm assuming it will be fairly costly?
Mr. Downey, and maybe I just correct it. I don't know if you were going to ask, but we don't actually own it. We maintain it, but Mr. Downey?
Oh, Mr. Mayor, that's important though, because.
Yes, we don't own it. We don't own it. I'll let
Okay.
Mr. Downey finish. Let Mr. Downey.
Okay, I'll just leave that for now.
Okay.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the land is actually owned by the Ontario Heritage Trust. And we have just recently actually entered into an agreement. It was previously leased to the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority and then subleased to portions of that sublease to the town. The Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority expressed interest not to renew their lease with the Ontario Heritage Trust. And so we've been in conversations with them and have recently, I believe it's been executed, although I may stand to be corrected, but with the Ontario Heritage Trust for ongoing use and maintenance of those lands. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. We will take a look at that. We'll find out what obligation we have within the lease with regards to any hazardous trees that may cause any public hazard to people walking on the trails. I would be happy to look at it. As I say, I haven't got the agreement in front of me, so I don't know what level of obligation we have on maintaining the trees, but we certainly will have an obligation to communicate that to Ontario Heritage Trust.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Downey. It's quite startling. Please have one of your staff look at it. I was shocked, and it is an area, in my opinion, and I think perhaps in your staff, that it will be an area of safety concern. So the sooner that someone can look at it, the better. Thank you.
Is that all, Councillor?
That's all. Oh, well, that's under new business, right?
Yeah, we're still new business, but I am coming right to you for PSA. So if you got a PSA, go right ahead.
Well, it's that time of the year when the turtles will be out and about. So I noticed, or last I looked, the lights weren't activated on Henderson and St. John. So that would be a question to Mr. Downey, but also just as for the public to drive slower in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Downey, did you get that?
So, Mr. Mayor, I've made a note. We'll check to find out when we're doing. We usually communicate with the resident, Wendy, to find out when she would like to have them put on, but be happy to take a look at it. Both locations, one on Henderson, one on St. John's.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Downey.
Anything else, Councillor?
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo, PSA? Councillor Thompson? Councillor Kim? Councillor Humphreys? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a reminder that the farmers market every Saturday, 8 to 1. Great turn up, beautiful weather, great pictures, Mr. Mayor, and that you published. So go on out. It's wonderful. We have live music happening almost every weekend and lots of different focuses and events. So please enjoy. And there was something else, but I can't think of it. Hopefully,
Nicolina.
Sorry?
Nicolina.
Thank you. That's the one.
Because I know you're going to tell me after I forgot. Go ahead.
I forgot. Yes, thank you. So you may have followed American Idol, and if you haven't, we were lucky. One of our own, Nicolina Bosso, made it to the top 5. She was Aurora Teen Idol a couple of years back in 2000. Second place, 2014, I believe.
Her sister's actually a teen idol.
Oh, and her sister actually became Miss Aurora Teen Idol. So great family of musicians and singers, extremely talented. So I just wanted to congratulate Nicolina and her family. She came in top 5. She was eliminated on Monday night. I was very disappointed, but she got a great career ahead of her. And I'm hoping that perhaps something in the town can be done eventually to provide her just a congratulations from all of us here. I know that she, I believe, currently lives in Vaughan, but grew up in Aurora and went to school in Aurora and so on. So I think we'll be able to share with maybe Mayor Bilawakwa. Maybe we could do something together. But anyways, very proud of her, and just so nice to see that our town supports arts and culture in a great way. And here's a young person from Aurora who did so great and has such a great future ahead of her. Just gives everyone hope that it can happen. So congratulations, Nicolina.
Absolutely. Congratulations. And I'll just say, I think me and Mayor Bevelak, we're going to have an arm wrestle to see who Nicolina belongs to. And I'm feeling pretty confident, I got to say. So
We got this.
Yeah. Councilor Gilliland, PSA.
This on. Thank you. I just I always like to give a shout out to the Aurora Cultural Center and all the great things that are happening, especially the live events. And there is a live concert on May 20th. Tika is the artist. It's R&B singer, songwriter, and soul, and it's located at St. Andrews College. That's where the event's going to be. So check it out in the Aurora Cultural Center. That's happening May 20th. And of course, I just want to talk about that there is a gallery, art gallery going on right now on the second floor of Town Hall as well, featuring artwork by Andrew Chetty Sukra, which is absolutely amazing. So make your way over there if you can. You can see it virtually or in person, and that's on from May 11th to July 8th. Of course, there's lots of other things to check out at Aurora Cultural Center, so I encourage you to go online and see what fun stuff's there. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, this Thursday is the deadline to register for Cycle Aurora from June 1st to July 1st. Cycle through Aurora and participate in a series of challenges for the chance to win prizes. For more information, visit aurora.ca, Cycle Aurora. And we all know the long weekend's coming up, and I just got a reminder from Central York Fire Services that they want to remind residents to be safe with the use, handling, and disposal of fireworks, and mindful of neighbors, especially our furry friends. When celebrating. I think a lot of us know, and anyone that has a dog knows that some really don't like fireworks and they get really scared. And so anything we can do to be mindful of that. Also, just to remind everyone, fireworks are only permitted for sale and use during Victoria Day and Canada Day weekends. Fireworks are not allowed on public property, including parks, streets, and open fields spaces, and are only permitted on May 22nd and 23rd between dusk, approximately 9:30 p.m. and 11 p.m. Councilor Garner, did you want to add something?
I was going to, but I want to thank you very much for being so thorough about the information for our residents.
Okay. And I can add one more just to let everyone know that there are fines for improper use of fireworks in Aurora, and it starts at $600 in accordance with fireworks bylaw. And residents can report bylaw infractions such as the use of fireworks by calling 905-727-3123 and following the prompts for after hours bylaw service. Other than that, I think everyone should have a great long weekend. And I think everyone's looking at enjoying a restriction-free long weekend. With all that said, I call for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gilliland, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.